Hello, America. Welcome to the Excalibur Business and Life Coaching Show with host, Coach Jeff Arthur.
Hey, everybody. Hello there. My name is Jeff Arthur. This is the Excalibur Business and Life Coaching Show. I am joined today by wonderful in-studio guest, Judy Ryan. Judy, who exactly are you? Just explain what you do, all that good stuff.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate being on here. My name is Judy Ryan, and I am the owner of Lifework Systems. I am a human systems specialist, and I work with leaders and executives to help them to create productive teams and internal leadership so that they stop driving away their good people and making a haven for their disengaged people, basically.
Say that last part again.
Most of the time, people have conditions in their workplace, their home, their school, wherever, that invite people that are disengaged to remain and actually force and drive away the people that are their best, most engaged people.
How do they do that?
Most of the time, we don't realize that the environment, the culture, the way that we've set up our practices with regards to the human systems, things like how people think, speak, act, and feel, when those aren't in place, we actually have a really high probability that we're not going to have a healthy workplace. And so what happens is, the people that are fully engaged, that really like to participate and do very creative things, they won't stay around if the organization is unhealthy. And the people that are the most disengaged, the gossipers, the naysayers, the negative people, they'll hang out there as long as you tolerate that sort of behavior in the workplace.
There's the word. There's the word. I find it amazing, and again, lobbing up a softball question for you. I find it amazing how much leaders will tolerate.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
I think their biggest challenges are understanding how to get their culture to transform. They may have been reading because it's becoming more mainstream for people to look at workplace culture and the importance of that, but they have no idea really how to get their arms around it. And even your top people are often uncomfortable with, how do I do that transition without looking like such a newbie? They may not know how to overcome the people that are going to be resistant. There's lots of reasons that an executive will struggle with changing the environment or the culture. And a lot of times they think it's just too costly and it's not worth the money because they haven't really examined what is the cost for not doing that.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you say all that because as I work with business owners, they know how to manufacture the widget. That's why they went into business to do that, whatever that widget is for them. But they're not always gifted with people skills or finance skills, or they haven't gotten a degree in business. I just know how to make the widget, and I started doing that in my garage, and now I've got to figure out how to expand because the orders are blah blah blah, and et cetera, et cetera. So when we start talking about then the culture in the business, well, I find that the culture may have been set up because that's what the owner liked, which is not healthy for everybody else. Or the owner is so focused on manufacturing the widget, somebody else that was unhealthy came in and set up the culture the way they wanted it. And so, okay, now we're going to change the culture. And again, anytime you can tell me, no, I'm off. Am I pretty close on it?
No, you're very close on. I think the only thing I would add to it is that most of the cultures that are set up happen almost as a default to the way we were raised and the way we were educated in schools.
Absolutely, because that's what I know. Then that's what I'm going to recreate if I'm in charge of it.
Right, and in that case, what we don't know actually is hurting us quite a lot. So
absolutely. Well, the whole effect of the blind spot. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't even know that I don't even know it.
Exactly.
Therefore, I'm going to recreate it.
Right.
But then I'm going to change the culture. And the thing you said there 5 minutes ago that I'm leading all this to come back to. Okay, Judy, I need to change the culture. Okay, I need to change the culture. But I don't have the confidence in myself or in my idea to change the culture to move forward, especially whenever, and you said the word there, as soon as I hit the resistant people, okay, well, now I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do.
Right. That's why I think it's so important. I even, within a couple years ago, changed my company name to have the word systems in it, because what happens is people sort of try to piecemeal things together to create a culture. And you really need to approach culture change in a very systematic way so that you understand that how to even hire, how to fire, how to orient people. A great example of this is the book by Tony Hsieh, who is the founder of Zappos. It's called Delivering Happiness.
Sure.
And it's about creating a specific type of responsibility-based, value-based culture. And how do you go about doing that? That's one area, is focusing on how do we integrate values, for example. But there's lots of elements to the human systems in a workplace or a school or home that most people don't know those elements to it. So they're coming in sort of trying to to pull these tools. They go to a workshop, they try to come back and integrate something, but it's not necessarily built in a really stable framework that people can go back to and that will sustain over time.
Well, it's interesting that you say, because going back to the word systems, because you're right. They go, this isn't working. Well, it's working over at, how did Zappos do that? Or how did whatever, from Google to how do they do that? Okay, well, I go to the workshop, or I go to the seminar, or I read the book, or I listen to the podcast, or whatever else. And I grab hold of 2 or 3 nuggets of information. I think, okay, I finally have found the keys to success here and how I'm going to whatever, only to at some point realize, no, I found 2 or 3 nuggets that were not together, but as you said, that's one piece of one system within the whole conglomerate of whatever. Okay, well, I may have found a nugget for system, just for clarification, for part 1 of system 1, and a nugget for part 6 of system 2, and a nugget for part 20 of system 3, and I'm trying to put it all together, and I can't figure out why this isn't working. Yes, no?
Exactly. One of the images that I could speak to for your listeners is the image of a house.
Sure.
And the foundation being trustworthiness, and some of the elements in the rooms are things like emotional and social intelligence, and intrinsic motivation, and collaboration, and the 8 values that build trust, and having a distributive model where everyone in the organization gets the tools. Most of the time what happens is a leadership team will go off and they'll do a retreat or something, but nobody in the levels below them get the sufficient information for that entire house to be built. So it's kind of like if you're trying to build a house and you say, well, I think I'll just choose that bathroom, but it doesn't fill in, this larger picture.
Absolutely. Well, and you say that, and I go right back to Lencioni. And I think it's the 4 whatever of the executive, where it's, once you have your team in place, you have your vision, you over communicate.
Yes.
You communicate, over communicate.
Yes.
Communicate again, because you think you know it and because you think you've said it does not mean that they have understood it all.
Right. It's really interesting that you mentioned him, because one of his recent articles was called The Last Competitive Advantage. And he says the last competitive advantage is organizational health. And what he's talking about in that article, he references sort of vaguely 6 things. Well, those 6 things that people need to have clarity around and have approval of are the purpose. What are we trying to cause besides profit? What are the values that we have to operate by to achieve that? And what are the visions that we have for expressing it at this time? And then how do we set SMART goals around all of those visions that we've created? It has to happen in that order. And he's talking about making certain that people have clarity around that, making sure that the leadership team is cohesive around that, and that everybody approves of that so that everyone's moving in the same direction willingly.
Yeah, what I try to do with people is I try to help them achieve a level of balance in a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level to help them then deal with the stuff in their life. I say that to you, and you say what?
I say that it's great that you're looking at it from a holistic, comprehensive approach, that people are not just one facet, they're not just their work, they can't shut off parts of themselves, that everything does affect everything else. So I love to hear that you approach it from that balance.
Why do you think people struggle with that? Meaning that, okay, we're going to look at this from a holistic approach because it all affects one another, and yet whenever I talk with people about that, that's almost, I don't want to say like a new concept, but it is something that they don't always really understand at first. Why do you think that is?
I think most people think that they're supposed to already know a lot of things that they don't know. One of the reasons that I talk a lot about human systems with people, whether I'm doing life coaching or whether I'm doing business coaching, is that we all have this idea that we've been taught everything. And most of us have not, around creating balance, around how to get along with other people, about how to stay internally motivated, all kinds of things. So we're sort of faking it a lot of times until we have the need for a life coach. And then we realize, we can open up about, I don't have a clue what to do over here in this situation. My personal belief is that everybody needs coaching and support because we have blind spots. And I know myself, I will always have a coach because I can't see my own blind spots.
Right. It's interesting as you say that, and I love the phrase when you say that. A lot of times we fake it as we go through. How many people do you think are faking it?
I would say the majority of people. When people work with me, they often have this relief when they realize they're not the only one that has those feelings or these ideas or this lack of clarity or awareness about what to do in their lives, whether it's in their workplace, whether it's with their family. Brene Brown is a researcher on shame and vulnerability, and she talks about we're the most over-medicated, overweight, over-financed culture because so many people are hiding the vulnerabilities they have, the places where they don't feel that they have it all together.
And not only do I agree with that, I will add on to that, and then please respond to this. Whenever I sit down with a client, one of the very first things I tell them is that we're going to be gathering information, but there's no judgments. Mm-hmm. Because as you're explaining all that, what I hear in my head is people feel so judged and lead their life through a fear of, I'm afraid that, Judy, you might figure out that I don't have all the answers, and then that's going to change your perspective of me or change your opinion of me. I'm going to fake it one way or the other. Even if I fake it into a brick wall of my life, I'm going to fake it because I don't want you to know that I don't have all the answers, because I'm afraid that I'm going to be judged because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I try to help people with right away is do whatever you have to do to let go of worrying about people's love, approval, and acceptance, because it's not as needed as we think. It's really more important that we love, approve, and accept of ourselves and others. That's actually what causes us the greatest joy. And so I'll just tell you a quick story about this that kind of reminds me of it. I went to an event where this man was presenting, and he had about 50 people in the room. And when he came in and he met everybody, when he started the event, he could just name everybody in the room. He'd call out on people real easily and remember their names. And I said to him afterwards, do you have some kind of technique that you use to remember everybody's names? Because I was so impressed. And he said, no, what I do is when I pull up to any event where I'm going to be, in the public, I sit for a few minutes and I say, what am I afraid of being judged for? And I give myself permission to be those things that I'm afraid of being judged for. And he said, then when I walk in, I have no guard up. He said, you know how many times we walk up to somebody and we shake their hand, and 2 seconds later we're like, what was their name? They just said their name.
Sure.
It's because we have this protection. We're always looking at, is it safe in here? Are people going to judge me? So when he deals with that within himself beforehand, he's fully present when people say their name. I just thought that was fascinating.
But as you tell the listening audience here, okay, allow yourself to not be judged, and allow yourself to not worry about the approval, however you said that. Say that again.
Right.
The love, approval,
and acceptance
of others. So people are listening, they're going, holy guacamole, that sounds really cool. Now, you just gave an example of a gentleman who, because my question to you is, asking this for the audience is, how do I do that? Now, you just gave a technique where this guy actually on purpose, it sounds like emotionally and mentally aligned himself to say, I'm not worried about judgments here. I'm going to go in. I'm going to be who I am.
I'm so glad that you asked this question, because it's a great clarifying question. It's not so much a mental thing, like I'm going to just not let people bug me.
Correct.
What is important, and this is something I'm working on still in my life, is just to sink into those places where we're judging ourselves, because really that's what we're projecting onto others anyway. Oh, they're going to think I'm fat. Well, it's because I'm thinking I'm fat. Or they're going to think that I'm stupid. It's because I'm worried that I'm stupid. So it's really about allowing yourself to be sensitive to what it is that you're most afraid of within yourself. And I think that's what he was describing when he said, I sit in my car and I look at, what am I afraid of being judged for? His process was more internal. I'm going to sink into this fear, and I'm going to let go of my judgment of myself around this. And that's really the harder thing to do.
Well, I was going to say, because and I mean, that all comes back to, I'm being led by my fears, which leads me right into the self-judgment, which then allows you to control me, and I give power of my life over to you.
Yes. This is a very exciting conversation for me, because most people don't want to face the fact that they're leading by fear. And that's why we overdrink, we overeat,
Now you get into how I kill the pain. My name again is Jeff Arthur. This is the Excalibur Business and Life Coaching Show. I am sitting here with Judy Ryan, the founder of Lifework Systems.
Yes.
You can find her on the web at lifeworksystems.com.
Yes, that's correct.
And I'm saying that slowly because systems is plural. You got an S on the end of it.
On the end of it, but not on the end of works.
Right, so Lifework Systems.
Correct, thank you.
You added systems because as you're helping people or helping the companies put the culture in place, it is all about establishing the system.
Yes, if you don't have good systems, all the tools and strategies in the world aren't going to get you the results that you want. It's kind of like saying, well, I've got all the tools and hammers and this idea of building a house, but I don't have any kind of a blueprint or framework to build it within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whenever I go into a company, the very first thing I do is I work with the CEO to help them identify their values, their vision, and their mission on a personal level, do that with the executive team, and then help them identify their values and the vision and mission for the company before we go anywhere else. Yes or no?
Absolutely. In fact, we measure those things and work with the leadership team and the top executives on that. But in addition to that, those are alignment questions. We also look at how well, even within the leadership team, are people living to the 8 values that build trust.
And so we set the systems in place, going right back to where we ended last segment. Set the systems in place all off of what I would consider the foundation of everything, or the platform of everything, which is the vision of the company. Where are you going? The values of the company. What do you stand on? What is this about? Go ahead.
And even within those values, what sort of organization do I want to run? Do I want to run one that's control-driven, using a lot of autocratic methods, a lot of bribing and incentives, a lot of judgment and evaluation, or do I want an environment in which my primary objective is to transfer responsibility to other people so that they're responsible for how well they get along with other people, that they're responsible for how much they get done and how motivated that they are? That is the bigger challenge, is how do we do that?
How did you had the autocratic, and how did you define the other?
There's 3 really common control-driven methods. You can see them in homes, schools, and workplaces.
Absolutely.
They're coming in like, I'm the boss, you do what I say, I'm paying you the bills, I'm going to dictate to you everything.
Yes.
The second one, which most people are not aware of, is there's lots and lots of research that show that there's a lot of really harmful effects by carrot and sticking people, putting incentives and rewards and all that out there.
Got the reward out there.
And then the third way is using a lot of judgment and evaluation, in a sense of, you've got to please me, I'm going to give you my thumbs up, my thumbs down. All of those things are extrinsic motivators. And what they do is they weaken people's intrinsic motivation, and they come from a lot of fear within the people using
wait a minute. Wait. Define those words for me. Extrinsic means what?
Extrinsic means I'm doing something as though the responsibility for the outcome is outside of me. I've got to please someone else. Someone else is giving me the motivation from outside of me, as opposed to being motivated from the inside out.
So I was going to say, it's the very thing we did in the last segment on, of I've given my power to you. It's the extrinsic, you're in charge of me.
Yes.
That's the carrot dangling, that's the judgment, that's the whatever.
Right. All those control-driven methods are, what they do is they actually weaken, not only are they not very helpful, but they actually weaken people's internal motivation. It'd be like if somebody carried somebody around all day long, they wouldn't have very strong leg muscles.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
so most people don't know how to transition from managing, motivating, and evaluating people to being a manager or leader who really focuses on being a good mentor to his people or her people.
Well, and what's interesting there, and again, lobbing softball up, you use the word manager, leader, mentor, and all 3 of those are different roles.
Absolutely.
None of those are the same thing.
Right.
And I think that a lot of times people put all 3 of those in the same category, and they are not.
They are not. And
because a great manager is not a good leader, and most good leaders are not very good managers, and none of that means I can actually mentor anybody, because I don't know that I can teach you what I know.
Or I may not know how to teach you the most effectively, because there's no framework of systems. You know, most people could go into an organization and say, okay, we need to make sure everybody's trained on the sales systems, or we need to make sure they're trained on the computer systems or the accounting systems.
Correct.
But we don't have a thing in place that says, let's train everybody on the human systems, on the culture systems. That is typically not something people have in their toolkit.
No, because it scares them, because now you're getting into psychobabble stuff that I don't know what you're talking about, and that's going to freak me out. And can't they just go, Judy, can't they just go push the buttons that manufacture the widget and leave me alone, and it's going to be okay?
Right. There's some truth to that. And even when somebody's not afraid of it, because they know it's more than any kind of psychobabble, it's just getting your arms around it, because it's as if it's the untalked about, unspoken area that people don't want to admit. I don't really know how to do that. And
right.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know where to even start.
Which comes back to where we started the whole show with: I don't admit that I don't know what I don't know, because I'm afraid of being judged and in looking like I don't know what I'm talking about. Therefore, I will keep my mouth closed and allow my fears to lead me.
Yes, and that's why we were just talking during the break that I love the book by Lencioni called Getting Naked, because it's all about jumping in and being helpful and putting aside whether you look like you know what you're doing or not. And if people could, again, not worry about whether they're loved, accepted, and approved by others, we'd get so much more done. And we wouldn't be so worried about the process of change and how you can go through awkward stages getting there. So...
Well, and see, it's interesting, again, because as soon as you throw out the word awkward stage, I don't want to do that.
Right.
That triggers, I think that triggers a fear in people because I don't want to look awkward in front of me, especially if I'm the leader, if I'm the founder, if I'm the CEO, if I'm the leader, if I'm the whatever. Oh my gosh, if I look like I don't know what I'm doing and I look like I'm awkward and I look like I'm, stumbling around here, Judy, why would you follow me if I don't know where I'm going?
Right. And what's so interesting is the greatest asset we have is our vulnerability and our honesty. That's why the foundation of the culture that you build is trustworthiness. And most people are not able to live to the values that actually build that trustworthiness and that trust between people. And so one of the things we talked about before the break was that we measure not only alignment, like things around purpose, values, and vision, and all of those things.
Right.
We also measure a couple of other things. And one of those is how well are people, especially in the beginning, measuring how well is the leadership team living these 8 values that actually create trust.
Straightforwardness, honesty, receptivity, disclosure, recognition, respect, follow through, and seeking excellence. And again, these are 8 values that help build the foundation of trustworthiness, which is everything for the company.
It's everything. I think that when you can build that, you can admit to people, hey, we're transitioning to a new culture, and it's going to be a little dicey in the beginning because we're all learning, and you won't have that fear of, I have to look like I know what I'm doing at all times. Right. And many other things besides. So what we do is we'll describe, for example, straightforwardness, because it's very different than honesty. We can be honest as the day is long, but not necessarily tell people what we expect and what's going on for us and what we want. So we would have a description and we'd say, okay, how important is this to you on a scale of 1 to 10? Right. And then we'd say, how well is this actually being done within our leadership team? And if there's a 4 or 5 point gap between that, that's called the trust gap. And what we are able to do is measure that on all of those values and then say, if you move the dial on this, you'll see a lot of returns on that investment of change, of working on those issues. And so there's just lots and lots of ways that we help them to improve and close that trust gap.
Yeah, it's really interesting how everybody talks about how we need trust, but nobody really identifies, okay, so what are those characteristics or traits of the trustworthiness? And as I look at these 8 traits, and I mean, holy guacamole, from the honesty to the straightforwardness to et cetera, but the thing that jumps out at me on this particular list, it's the follow through, and how whenever the leaders don't follow through or don't follow up or don't finish whatever it is that they said they were going to do, how that absolutely just undermines everything else.
Right. Absolutely. Follow through on commitments is a big one.
Let's go back to what we were talking about during the break. Why people get into the stuff they get into and the blind spots and lead them and the personal struggles they have and they don't realize what's going on.
Well, one of my favorite things of all to talk about is what does it really mean to be personally responsible? Because when you talked a little bit about following through on commitments or really lots of things that we do or don't do, what happens is we don't realize that we operate at times from a belief that our authority is outside of us. So we have, maybe it's an actual person that we're feeling powerless to, or it might be an inner authority from our childhood. It could be Sister Mary Josephine who just, really put it in our heads that we should, we ought to, we have to, we need to, we can't. Whenever we're thinking or saying, I have to do that, I really need to do that, I really should do that, we're in what's called other directed. And when we're in other directed, we're really coming from either resentful compliance or rebelling and resisting.
Say that again, resentful compliance?
Or rebelling and resisting. I'll give you a quick example of that.
Sure, absolutely, that'd be great.
But that's at the root of why we're not accountable. If we're aligned and we're self-directed, when we know that we're making our own choices, we're thinking through the consequences, all kinds of things, and we mean what we say and we say what we mean, so we will follow through on a commitment. When we don't, it's because we're inadvertently in this other-directed mindset. So, for example, I'll just tell you a couple quick ones. There was this guy that I dated one time who he would never put his safety belt on in the car. And my father never wore his, but I knew why my father didn't. So I asked this guy, why is it that you don't wear your safety belt? I'm just curious. And he said to me, well, I'm not letting the government control me. Now, that's a good example of somebody that's not in freedom. They're in reaction to what they perceive as some authority figure, and so they're going to rebel and resist. They're not thinking about what's the consequence to my kids if I get killed, or what's the consequence to me. It's all about reacting. Or let's say you're a teenager and your mom says to you, look, you think you're going to go out with your friends today. Your room's a mess. You get in there and you clean that room. And you go to that belief that I don't have any choices, that I'm sort of the victim of her.
Correct.
Then if you clean that room, it's going to be with resentful compliance. So you're only going to do it at maybe 50%. You're not going to do it at an A-plus job.
Correct.
Or you might just say, no, I won't, you can't make me. And either way, you're coming from a place of reacting to that authority instead of saying, what am I feeling and what do I want? And what would be the consequences of all my choices? And I'm going to be responsible for the decision around the task, the decision around my relationship with my mom. If I'm in the other directed side, I'm going to be saying to my friends, oh, I'm in a bad mood because my mom made me in a bad mood.
Absolutely.
Or in some way I'm going to be saying it's all her fault, or it's all this other. So we're blaming, we're being a victim, we're being mean-spirited. Many, many bad things are happening in the world because people aren't slowing down and saying, what is really authentic in this moment for me? What am I feeling? What am I choosing? Am I weighing the consequences? And when we don't do that, it's always something bad that's going to come of that.
What I have experienced with the people in a lot of those situations where the struggle to be authentic and say, what is it going on right now? I'm not sure that they value themselves enough to even identify what is authentic for them.
That's often true, that we're so used to being afraid to really say, I'm okay.
Right, and well, Carrie, coming back to the word you used 25 minutes ago, that shame, the guilt,
Yes.
the shame and the guilt, led either by the fear or the fear leading the shame and the guilt.
Yes.
Which then sucks me into this vortex, and what we call the insanity cycle is just, I'm going to be destined to repeat this over and over again because I don't know what I don't know, and I don't even know that I don't even know it. And I'm going to continue to struggle and to actually value myself enough to say, is this okay for me? Am I giving my power away? Am I actually going to value myself more than the acceptance and the judgment and all the other stuff that comes with it? People, I think, a lot of times struggle with that. Yes, no?
Absolutely. That's why I think when you're changing a system outside of you, you're also changing a system within you, or the systems within you. And that's why I say everybody needs a coach, because you can't do that without support often. And even when we do value ourselves, maybe this fits with what you're saying about being driven by fear. We're just all moving too fast.
Absolutely.
We don't give ourselves time to say, is this really, if I hear myself saying, I should do that, I have to do that, I ought to do that, I want to make sure I'm slowing down enough to go, wait a minute, that's a clue, something's not quite lined up.
Well, I think going too fast can be actually an effect of the fear of looking inward, because I don't want to actually know what that answer is.
I think you may be right. I didn't even think of it that way.
So the moving fast is a defense mechanism of, I don't want to know that.
Yes. And I am so afraid that I'm going to look like I don't know the answer.
Correct.
That if I slow down, I'll look stupid or something.
So, folks, taking the principles of what we're talking about here, and you can see this playing out in the family. Mom's got her defense mechanisms, Dad's got his defense mechanisms, and every one of the children have their own, and everybody's fighting or struggling because we don't know what we don't know with each other. Take it into the business world. The executive or CEO is going to lead everybody the same way, the way he likes to be or the way she likes to be led. The problem is she's got a team or he's got a team or they got multiple layers of teams that do not respond to the same way that I respond whenever I'm led. Therefore, there's already a breakdown in communication systems because I don't understand that these people don't respond the same way I might respond, because I've set the culture up to respond the way I like it, and therefore all of a sudden now I've got dysfunction out the wazoo and I haven't even got it started yet, and all I want to do is manufacture the widget, but I don't understand what I'm not doing correctly, and all of a sudden the culture is beginning to implode on itself, and I don't understand what's happening.
Absolutely.
And that can happen in my home, that can happen in my schools, that can happen in my job, that can happen in my relationship, husband, wife, parent, child, blah, blah, blah.
That's why it's so funny, because we've done work in schools, we've done work in families, we've done work in companies, and when I'm teaching in a company, they're saying to me, oh my gosh, this is working at home with my kids. When I'm working with families, they're saying, oh my gosh, I can take this to my workplace.
Well, that's not to interrupt you, but when I'm working with a client, either personal or at the work, I know that they are understanding it whenever they say to me, Maybe I should be reevaluating how I'm parenting my child.
Yes.
As soon as they say that, I'm thinking, oh, congratulations. I'm glad you're with me now. And now we're actually making a difference because that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the real stuff.
And that's why I love working with the executives, because they really carry the responsibility for how things are going to be run.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's so amazing because whenever you're talking about the victims a while ago, when you have the direct reports and they're so convinced that corporate or the upper echelon, they don't have a clue, they don't know what's really going on, they don't carry the responsibility. And then you work with the executives and, oh, you're right, they're the ones working 20 hours a day, mortgage their home for the company. They are the ones that have worked on the weekends for years to get the company where it's at. They're the ones that view every one of those employees as their own family on it. I mean, it's like this incredible communication disconnect where they don't understand what the other one has invested.
Right, and one of the things
don't understand the love.
One of the things that you said that I think is so key is one of my first goals with executives is to help them have a balanced life where they're not working 20 hours a day, because if they're good at transferring responsibility effectively all the way through the organization, they should never have to do that.
Yes. Judy, we're out of time. What the heck? This is Judy Ryan from Lifework Systems. You can find her at lifeworksystems.com. My name is Jeff Arthur. We're done, folks. Have a great day. See you later.